All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Thank you so much for joining our Cybersecurity Careers panel with the Maryland STEM Festival. We want to thank everybody for participating, and we hope you're able to enjoy and join a lot of the more events that we have that run through October this month. If you are interested in cybersecurity, for those who are listening, we have 4 more events that we want to make sure you're aware of. We've got a Cybersecurity 101 for students on October 21st with the National Cryptologic Museum. We've got a MITRE event. They're going to be running a Cybertron on October 25th. We've got a high school cybersecurity competition on October 27th. And we've got an ISSA chapter meeting on October 28th. And all that information can be found at our website, www.marylandstemfestival.org. All right, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Instagram, all of the above, and you can use our hashtag MDSTEMFest to follow along and share your STEM experiences with us. We're gonna send around a survey after this in order for everybody to let us know what you thought, and we're gonna get kicked off, okay? Also feel free to add questions to the chat. If you have things that you'd like to ask the panelists, we'll be fielding those as we're able and popping those into our conversation, okay? So our panelists tonight, we've got Adam Winter, who is a sales engineer at Tenable. We've got Bill Smith, who is a cybersecurity and insider threat analyst at Johns Hopkins APL. We've got Colin Little, who is a senior threat intelligence analyst at Centripetal Networks. We've got Mike Tillman, who is a department manager for cyber and non-kinetic operations at Northrop Grumman. And my name is Kate Shapiro. I am an SVP of operations at Launch Tech Communications, and I'll be facilitating tonight. So we can get started. Let's have each panelist in 2 minutes. What's your day job entail, and what was your first job in cybersecurity? Colin, can you kick us off? Can we get an unmute on Colin? Hold on a second.
There we go. Thanks, Kate. Hi, everybody. My name is Colin Little. My day-to-day job right now is I'm a threat hunter and a consultant. So what does that mean? I use various tools, techniques, and procedures to identify cyber threats across the entire spectrum of internet-connected devices. I consult with, the owners of those networks on the 5 Ws of who, what, when, where, and why they should care. And then, I tell them, I consult with them about what they should do about it and what I would do to help them with that. My first job in cybersecurity was as a help desk technician, answering phones and running around connecting power back into outlets and things like that. And it was through understanding those systems and obtaining certifications that I became aware of the inherent security that's sort of built into all those systems and was fascinated by it.
Love it. All right, Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Winter. I am a manager at Tenable, and I work with a group of what we call sales engineers, and they're individuals that help customers identify challenges or needs that they have, and then we map our software to help cover their problems. My day-to-day typically entails working with my team, listening to various use cases from companies, and trying to make sure we're giving the best fit to meet that customer's needs. And if we can't, we have to be consultants or come with that consultative approach and suggest things that will make things better. Maybe go to a different company to provide a certain type of technology or provide other insights that we have into the cybersecurity industry. My first job in cybersecurity, really, I started in IT years ago, and I learned how company networks worked, how people used computers, and then I started to learn about Microsoft patches and having to patch those systems and make sure they were up to date. Otherwise, we had the threat of either malware or attackers taking advantage of our systems, and that's really how I got into it, just understanding how the technology worked and seeing that there were needs. It's like a plant. You have to keep working on it. It isn't something you set it and forget it. You have to continually work with it and do what you can to take care of it.
Awesome. Mike?
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Tillman. As accused, I am the department manager for cyber and non-kinetic operations at Northrop Grumman. My role as the department manager day to day is not the most exciting thing, but what I primarily do is I manage a group of managers that execute programs that Northrop Grumman is providing and supporting to multiple government customers. So essentially, when the government has a detriment of talent in a certain area, they will lease out contracts, and Northrop Grumman is one of those contractors. So we provide a cadre of software engineers, software developers, systems engineers, and folks with other type of cyber operational expertise, and they perform support to government contracts in support of multiple missions in the IC community and the Department of Defense. What I actually do is I monitor the contract's performance, I monitor the performance of the managers. I am a senior advocate to the customers, so I meet with the executive leadership of the customers to ensure that their goals and their mission are being accomplished in the ways and means that they would like them to be, and as well as ensuring that we are being timely with our products and services and sticking to the boundaries within the contract. It's not the most exciting thing, but there's a more complex cyber component to it that I get involved in from time to time. We just don't have enough time to explain that here. Secondarily, to the second part of the question, my first role in cyber a whole 18 years ago, before it was even called cyber, I was a tier 1 computer system security specialist before the days of Splunk, Sumo Logic, Logarithm, QRadar, all the fancy SIM tools that do all this incident data correlation and enrichment. I was a guy that would take in mounds and mounds of individual incident reports from multiple services, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, and we would manually do correlation, looking for similar IP addresses that were the offenders, looking for similar exploit types and vulnerabilities being exploited, and would try to piece together a broader nature or a more nefarious intent with regard to the events that we were seeing in the same timeline. So that was probably light years ago compared to how things get done today, but that was my first job, working third shift on a watch center 10 to 6 every night. Thank you.
Boy. Bill, what you got?
I'm an insider threat analyst at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, and kind of in a nutshell, what I'm monitoring our staff members, for potential insider threats, and that could take the form of when employees leave, they may, take data or project data they've worked on over the course of the year, their career here, thinking that they've worked on it, it's their property, when it's really not. And the overarching goal is we do not want sensitive record data, whether it's APL data or sponsored data, walking out the door. And that's we use a variety of tools and other processes to kind of monitor for that sort of activity. We have technical tools, but we also, just kind of some manual indicators, as well, that we, look at. And like I said, our goal is, is to prevent data from walking out the door. By far, that's the biggest threat, but it could, we do not want, so yeah, I think that's probably the best way to explain it. And that's what I'm doing in that role, is leveraging kind of what I was doing in my prior time here at APL, which was as our SOC lead, where I was monitoring our network for cyber intrusions. And, I did that for about 10 years. And the last 4 years, I've been in the insider threat role, and just kind of leveraging that background just in a different capacity. And as for my first cyber job, it was actually an internship I did with Cigna when I was doing my undergraduate degree, where I was a system administrator / network technician, and that was really my kind of first main exposure to cybersecurity. And I was working with Novell NetWare networks, for those that remember that name. And that's that just kind of at that point, that really solidified the interest that I had in cyber before it actually became a thing. But that's when I started to get my feet wet, and then had 2 other internships, and then eventually landed at APL, where I've been now for a little over 20 years now.
Excellent. All right, so let's dive into this cybersecurity thing a little bit, Is there more to cybersecurity than hacking and hunting? Adam, why don't you kick us off? What do you think about this?
Gladly. I definitely think there is more to it. When I was younger and, in my first job out of school, I didn't think there was. And I think at that time, there may not have been a whole lot. It wasn't very well known. But having spent a lot of time in corporate America and working through various jobs and working through a lot of companies and seeing a lot of companies, there's a lot more to it. So hacking and hunting is kind of that, what would you call it, the seeker, trying to find that thing. But you have to also look at it from a defensive aspect. When you're working at a company, understand how that company's network works, how they use technology to run their business, and then how that technology could effectively be used against them. So you're not necessarily hacking or hunting there, but you're really just looking at it from almost like a puzzle, like how can I prevent this from being taken advantage of or affected? Similar to how you would try to secure your home, putting locks on doors and windows, putting up a fence, putting up curtains, all those types of things. It's very similar to how companies use technology. You need to do what you can to prevent bad actors or, threat from actually taking advantage.
Mike, Mike or Colin, do you have anything to add to that?
All right, Colin pointed
Point at you. Point at you, Mike.
No worries. 2 minutes, right? So Adam gave a great response. If you look at it conceptually, hacking is more of an offensive activity where you're trying to penetrate networks and affect and or steal data. And then the hunting is the opposite, right? The activity of hunting for hackers and trying to prevent them from accessing or stealing data. If you cascade it backwards out to the 30, 40, 50,000 foot view, cybersecurity is so many things. And if you look at it, it has become an international phenomenon. It affects every industry. I was previously to this role, I was the SOC manager for the Northrop Grumman Corporation, meaning that my organization protected the enterprise of Northrop Grumman. So I was able to make friends with my peers that work for Bloomberg News, my peer that works for Nike, my peer that works for Microsoft, my peer that works for the city of Baltimore that had a pretty serious ransomware incident a couple of years ago that we helped them through liaison partnership with. So cybersecurity affects every industry. It's everywhere. It's grocery stores, it's automakers, it's shoemakers, it's community colleges, it's large universities, it's college football, right? So it's the activity of protecting data, which is the value of any organization, whatever your intellectual property is, whatever that which makes you a viable commodity of any sort will need to be protected because it will reside on the network. So don't just think of cybersecurity at the laser focus level of hacking and or defending, but think of it how it affects the policy and how it could essentially affect the shareholders' decisions on whether to buy or sell a company or the viability of a company. If you are a cybersecurity provider and you can't protect your own data, you're going to have a difficult time gaining contracts to gain the trust of another corporation or of a customer. So cyber is a lot of things, and now it has grown so broadly that it touches just about every industry and every way of doing business in the modern world.
Yeah, I concur. All great answers. I'll take a stab at it next. I view hacking and hunting as a tip of the spear type of activity. Like Adam said, it's always breaking new ground and a very sort of forward-thinking form of security. But a lot of security is beyond that. When I think of cybersecurity, I think of the role that training and policy play in, forming the culture of an enterprise. If we focus on enterprise security as a whole, the enterprise operates as one, right? And when you look at it from the internet, that one enterprise will exude a culture onto the world, right? So arming our users, which is, our biggest and first line of defense, with that information of what the threats are out there is a very simple and holistic way to approach cybersecurity. It's become everybody's responsibility. So even non-cybersecurity professionals can be armed with, contemporary phishing techniques and things like that. The hacking and hunting aspect is, one of the most flashy and alluring parts of cybersecurity, I think. But some of the biggest heroes, as Mike, pointed out, is, the wins for policy. If we think let's go beyond the 50,000 level and let's look at it from outer space, from the moon, and the active cyber warfare that's occurring right now as we're talking about the topic. There's a lot of big mean people out there, and one of my favorite parts about it goes along with the hacking and hunting thing, but is stopping bad people from doing bad things. And there's bad people out there doing really bad things right now. And the policy, the legislature, the current news, it all sort of reveals it, right?
That's a great answer. All right, so we're thinking about, starting our own career in cybersecurity. There are a couple different ways to go about doing that, probably more than a couple. Bill, do you think a college education is a must for someone who wants to pursue a career in cybersecurity?
I kind of have an interesting response to this. I don't think it's necessarily a must, but I think the reality is that a lot of organizations will, require it as part of the overall qualifications. I certainly don't think it hurts because if nothing else, you're getting exposure to a lot of other foundational skills that are going to help you in your career. And in my case, when I started at APL, given our association with Johns Hopkins University, obviously education is important. So they, we're heavily looking at having the undergraduate degree, then expecting, professional staff to proceed to a master, in some cases, depending on what you're doing, PhD. So I did get my master's also in information insurance. But interesting kind of thing I've seen over time that APL has kind of evolved is that they've, as cybersecurity started to become more mainstream, I've seen a shift where they're still requiring the relevant, educational degree, but now they're also seeing the value and in many cases requiring the relevant certifications such as a CISSP, Security Plus, something along those lines. And, in a lot of cases, that's partly driven by, the government contracts that, we're working on that require, you to hold a certain or one of numerous certifications. So I guess my kind of answer to wrap that up is that, yes, I think it's not a must, but the reality is you're probably going to need it, but it's definitely not going to hurt you in your career. But you also need to consider other things such as the technical certifications as well, because ultimately it's going to be a combination of the two that is what's going to allow you to get your foot in the door at most organizations. So I would not advocate against it because I think there's a lot of value to having a degree beyond just saying, you have a degree in cybersecurity.
Colin, what are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Kate. Great answer, Bill. That was awesome. And I think a college education and a degree or a certification, any hallmark, or any form of higher education is a hallmark of a well-rounded professional, right? In the eyes of those who undertake it, because it's not easy or cheap or anything like that. But for cybersecurity in particular, I got my start in the military. As I joined the Marines, my exposure to secure technical operations really took off. And a lot of my education came from the field, right? Doing it in the field. And what I've come to realize is, cybersecurity falls under the security umbrella as a whole. So when I'm in the field, what I look for in a professional and a colleague is the mindset, the security mindset. And the topic, as we've discussed, is so broad that I would view higher education as a requirement, whether it's certification based or degree based, on the job training based, even hobby based, joining up on a local cyber league to have a red team, purple team exercise to have some fun, right? I would say that sort of continuing education is a must, but the mindset is what I look for in the field.
That's an excellent segue. So I think what makes sense is, what skills are necessary for someone to build a career in cybersecurity, right? Mike, I'm going to pass that buck to you.
Thanks. I'll try to make change for you here. Necessary skill set for a cyber professional, you could go in a lot of different ways. I'll start really simply with, as we spoke the other night, natural curiosity. Cyber is about the handling of data. the manipulation of data, and the ability to find the answers to a subset of questions, regardless of what your role is. If you're doing vulnerability management and vulnerability testing or vulnerability assessment, you need to understand what's truly at stake there. If you are a threat hunter, you need to understand where the opposition that you're hunting for is coming from and what their indicators or their fingerprints look like. If you are a penetration tester, you need to understand the network landscape, where the soft spots could be, should be, or what type of particular parameters that you're operating under, and not go beyond those. So back to that natural curiosity is going to keep you in the game, not chasing the rabbit, however, but finding good answers and solving difficult problems. Some skills that we discussed the other night, I always enjoy seeing the transferal of knowledge from adjacent job functions like help desk, system administration, things that are very heavy in troubleshooting, fact checking, and kind of taking a problem from 0 to 10 and going along each step along the way. So I would love to see folks with a natural curiosity for problem solving specifically, and it doesn't help to enjoy data mining. As networks grow, as corporations grow, as we now are migrating to the cloud, there's just more and more data. We talk about things like IoT and smart devices. There's just more data and more data and more data and more data. You'd be surprised how much. And so you have to have the ability to data mine. Hey, Colin, that's awesome. You have to have the ability to data mine and the ability to get through gobstops of data without overtaxing yourself and being able to find the right answers in that data. So you can't be afraid of data. You have to have a natural curiosity for finding answers, and you have to have that flexibility to move across multiple sets across this industry. So I'll stop there.
That's awesome. So Adam, you've got an interesting take on this too, because you do a lot of hiring of salespeople who we should not forget that sales is also a job in cybersecurity, right? So what is it that you're looking for when you're making hiring, or what skills do you think are critical to join the cybersecurity workforce?
Really, it's going to be something as simple as like your personality. To Mike's point, I think problem solving is very important. For me personally, throughout my entire career, I've always tried to be an individual looking for a problem and doing anything I could to solve that problem. Having that natural curiosity, as Mike said. But having that curiosity is good, but you also need to be able to interact with others. You need to be able to, put yourself in a situation, reach out to someone and say, hello, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. And ask questions and try to build rapport with those individuals. So very basic soft skills really goes a long way. And people for me that stand out are individuals that when they come in, they're vibrant, they're vocal, they introduce themselves. They don't necessarily wait to speak until I ask a question. Like they'll come up with a topic and bring it. They'll bring questions to me. They want to be actively participating and creating conversation. So for me, that's a huge bonus. Like the technical piece is very important. You have to understand technology. You have to have that drive and that passion, but you also have to be able to work with people. Now, for me, another part that's important is being able to work as a team. I think when a lot of people think of technology, people who are working in technology, think of people wearing like a hoodie, sitting in a dark room somewhere in a corner by themselves. And there's some of that out there. There you go. Some of that exists out there, but there's more to it. Like working as a team, you're not the only person doing this particular task. You have peers that are near you. You have adjacent parties in other departments or other organizations that you have to engage with, and being able to be part of a team, whether that's delegating responsibility or accepting responsibility and relaying information back, taking on projects, that's all very important as well.
Like that. Bill, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think from a technical perspective, I think depending on the area of cybersecurity you get in, I think programming or scripting background is definitely a plus, because there's always a need for like automating a process or some function like that. And that's from a personal perspective, that was always something I struggled with throughout my career. Program was never my kind of strong suit, and to this day it still isn't. But I mean, I kind of have enough skills there that when I may need to automate some task or process, I can kind of struggle through that. So I would, I would definitely, advocate for, getting exposure to that. If you're going, especially if you go into college, you're likely it's going to be a requirement anyhow. But I think it would behoove someone to have, a skill set in scripting nowadays. That could be Perl, Python, PowerShell, just something that you can rely on to, for automation purposes if that's needed. But beyond that, I think some other skills are more the softer skills that you need to consider as well. And then it's like technical writing and also doing technical presentations. At some point in your career, you're going to need to either, write a report or get in front of an audience and have to, present to them. And technical writing and public speaking were two of the best courses I ever took during my undergraduate degree. As the public speaking course helped me get over the fear I had of, presenting. Was I still don't enjoy it to this day, but I am definitely more comfortable, and I attribute it to that, class that I took back during my undergraduate degree, because I didn't have any choice but to get up in front of the class and do several presentations. And I think communication is key, and that, frankly, that could be the difference between, you getting a job and not getting a job. If you don't present yourself well during an interview, and particularly nowadays when a lot of this is remote, interviews and whatnot, I think communication is critical. So you need to be able to present yourself, and you also need to be able to sometimes do so to a mixed audience. So if you're, presenting to, higher level managers, if you start getting very technical with them, you're going to lose them real quick. So you have to be able to kind of consider that and tailor your presentation accordingly. And again, that, kind of goes back to the overall communication skills. So I would definitely emphasize those. If, nothing else, make sure, you can write and communicate both verbally and written.
Awesome. All right. So these are the skills that we're looking for, but what resources are out there for folks to pay attention to follow, to attend, as they're looking to get involved in cybersecurity? Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that, whatever a person is passionate about in the technology world, whether it's a phone, whether it's scripting and coding and machine language or IT in general, there's a security aspect for it and a community out there for support of the security of that, right? So I would say there's a lot of resources out on the internet. One of my favorites is one that might be glazed over very commonly. It's just the news. I would just keep your eye on the news because the important things that are happening within cybersecurity are being discussed there. I remember at one point, it's very memorable in my time, but it's when attacks were first starting to happen on the banking SWIFT system, and attacks were getting off with like $80 million and nobody could trace a dime of it. That's big problems. So I would say keep your eye on the news if you're looking to keep abreast of cybersecurity. That's like half of my day right now. Every day. It's changing so frequently. My day is, okay, what are they trying to do today? And what do I need to focus on as a result? Or what glaring vulnerability has been released today? And which systems do I own that are applicable? Or whatever backend process needs to be, So it all sort of stems out from what's happening today.
And do you really get most of your news and your updates like that from like your bleeping computers, your patch reports, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it comes from a mix of three main sources. One is the open source community out there on the internet, all the way from the official systems that actually produce intelligence that, it could be something you just register for. It could be a community that you have to be referred by, somebody hush. But from those sources all the way to news sources, blogs, podcasts, people talking about it, scouring sources from the internet, it comes from there. It also comes from a very specific sect of intelligence about bad guys out on the internet who have been seen doing things and understanding what they've been doing and when and why and all that stuff. And then knowledge of my own operations. That would be the third leg of that, right? What do I do? And how does this activity align with that mission? and having that institutional knowledge in all three areas, right? Of the threat landscape out on the internet, the threat landscape of what's been actively used on the internet, and the landscape that I'm working with, my impact, my footprint to the internet, right? I would say it comes from all three of those areas.
All right, Mike, you've got some interesting points on this as well.
Sure. To add on to what Colin just said, there are some free offerings out there that you can tap into. One of my favorites is called the Cyberwire. The Cyberwire is a daily publication of things and events going on out in the world. There's a service provided by a company called Digital Shadows that provides good information. You've got your blogs like the blogs that Brian Krebs started, Krebs on Security, the old school SANS Internet Storm Center. So, these are publications. You've got Twitter. Twitter has a great cyber feed that publishes a lot of awesome information. And as a matter of fact, most cyber operations centers that I'm aware of actually use the Twitter feed to provide kind of like a first warning of late breaking things going on out in the World Wide Web, or the World Wide West, as we call it sometimes, right? The internet, right? The interwebs. So those are some more formal places, but I would say it's really important for young people to find opportunities. Colin also mentioned like cyber leagues. So you have to find the information and find what's going on through these open source or publicly available things. And then you also have to sharpen your tools, right? You got to test your mettle. So cyber leagues. So for middle school, high school students, Cyber Patriot is a great program. For college students, the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. These are nationwide and even sometimes internationally held competitions that allow young people to participate on a voluntary basis. So these type of activities where you are, one, learning what's going on out in the world, and then two, trying to become an actual practitioner of some of these things, trying to understand what actual raw packet analysis looks like, trying to actually engage to see what Wireshark results look like, what do actual logs look like when they are pulled from a database, or when they crunched and they come up in a Splunk query or a QRadar stream, right? So what does that actually look like, and how do you make sense of that? So specifically, be active out in the world, figure out what's going on, get some feeds, get some good information, and then go home and try to use some of this. Virtual machines only, right? We're not doing this to anyone. We're not doing anything live, but virtual machines only in a lab environment, but go forth and try to put together some skills that will benefit you.
That's great. All right, so we got some questions from the audience that we're going to pop in here and see what you guys think. This is a free-for-all, so whoever jumps first is all about it. Did your major in college relate to cybersecurity?
I'll go ahead and start. I mean, not directly. It was information. I actually started out of computer science, and my sophomore year decided I wasn't really for me, and switched over and finished with information system and technology, which it did touch on some of the content. Did have a cyber aspect to it, but at that time, which was I graduated in '98, cybersecurity degrees really didn't exist at that point. So it was, but some of the courses I took did kind of touch on cyber. And then when I got my master's degree several years later, that was in information insurance, which was definitely focused, on cyber. And that was 2005. So that was right about time cyber really kind of midstream when cyber was really starting to become a thing. So, so that's my answer there.
My first continuing education was in networking technology, so switching and routing, and then I dove into systems administration stuff from there. Got my A+, got my a Security Plus. Mostly it was all certification based, and then the OJT, the on-the-job training, was as that help desk technician. That's where I got started, and then cybersecurity was something that my career path defined my education path for. So.
I would concur with Colin. When I was fortunate enough, my high school back in the 90s had a program, or we had career tracks that we could take. And I took it was computer information technology at the time, and it was mostly programming. But when I was getting into I think it was 12th grade, we had some Cisco networking classes, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the, I guess, the pioneers or pioneer classes to go through it. And then that got me interested in networking and network technologies. And then when I went to community college, I was able to continue that towards, getting certified and, Cisco certification, and understanding that there was no cybersecurity, but there was a lot of talk in the classes around security. I remember talking in a class with some peers, and it was the teacher was he was a worker for a backup company. I don't remember what it was. And we talked about ARP spoofing and doing different things on the network that really you shouldn't be doing. And it was an interesting conversation because there were other people in the class who also worked in the industry and technology, and some people on the, at the time, I guess, security side. There wasn't cybersecurity the way it is today. I would say today, if you are looking at a degree, cybersecurity is it's a great way to get some exposure. I think Bill mentioned it earlier. It gives you a lot of exposure to a lot of the technologies. You don't necessarily go super in depth into them, but you do get a lot of exposure to them.
Oh, I'm last, right? Criminal justice, political science.
Yes.
I wanted to be a Secret Service agent or an FBI agent. Cyber was probably the furthest thing from my mind when I went to college the first time back in the 90s. But I did go back to school in the mid 2000s and focused on information assurance and cybersecurity. But I would say, as you heard from everyone, probably one of the most important things is to figure out, in my opinion, what your skills are, what you're good at, and then how to get better at those things that you're not so good at. Networking, fundamentals of networking. I'll say it again, fundamentals. It's a foot stomp moment, right? Fundamentals of networking are the keys to the castle here. Understanding how a network operates, understanding how data traverses a network, and there you'll find the skills to identify errors versus malicious content, right? How to identify what's going on the network, and then you can cascade just about anywhere from there. So cybersecurity is an interesting major within the college space. Only 30% of colleges in the US actually carry cybersecurity majors. The others have adjacent opportunities and technical certification type programs or certificate programs and such. So you have to be careful, but the most common entry point is right now computer science, computer engineering. Those are the areas that people are going to the most. So cybersecurity is good. Just make sure you come out of school with some practical skills. Your skill base should not just be lab-centered activities in class. You should have some practical experience to follow up with the degree that you just achieved.
Mike, you gave us some real talk when we talked on Monday night about, your first job is going to be a lot of tough stuff.
Sure.
You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Here's your disclaimer. The opinions henceforth are those only of Mike Tillman and not representative of the Maryland STEM Festival Foundation, right? So if you think of it conceptually, our first jobs are entry level or our college hire, or if you were an intern and you were brought on as a full-time employee, these are not going to be the most outstanding years or the most excellent jobs of your life. You have to think conceptually. You're probably working for a business. That business is in the business of making money or trying to do great things for pretty important customers. So initially, the work that you're doing, if this is your prove yourself job, your first job or two, this is your, okay, let's see what you're made of. This is your paying your dues opportunity. So you have gone to school, you have worked hard, you have achieved this milestone activity of getting a degree and graduating, and now you're entering the workforce. You are writ large, just like NFL, NBA, or Major League Baseball player. You are a draft pick. You are a rookie. It is time for you to do rookie things. So coming out the gate, if I work for a Fortune 100 company, which I actually happen to do, and we have a very important product, unfortunately, you're not going to be the one that's going to have the most important job or touching that actual product, because I don't have any reputable experience, or I don't have any registered feeling or understanding for what you're capable of as a professional. So my advice to you would be, regardless of the level of importance of your job, do your best work early. Regardless of how you feel about it, do your best work early and often. And regardless of where you think this is going to lead you or whether you think this is beneath you, do your best work anyway, because this is the establishment of your name, your brand, your reputation as a professional, right? This is you establishing and saying, no matter how unimportant this task is, I am adult enough, I am professional enough to give this the attention and the effort that it deserves to do a great job. When speaking to my mentees and they say to me, hey, Mike, I don't know about this. I don't feel like I'm being challenged. I said, so you're saying it's easy? If it's easy, you should be crushing it. You should be the top performer. You should be outperforming and outlasting any and every one of your peers within your office. And if you're not, you are only failing yourself because you're being tested. Your discipline, your focus, and your professionalism are always on front and on display at all times, but especially when you're in your early career years, because folks are trying to see what you're made of.
There we go.
I could add on to that real quick by, just saying that on top of that, as managing, Marines and stuff like that, one of the other things I would look for is, if an employee did come to me and say, oh, I'm having a really light week, or that was easy, I would much more be looking for the employee that would say, hey, I'm working on this next level thing because I've got all this free time, or because I'm crushing it, rather than, oh yeah, I'm pretty much on vacation, boss. Is this meeting almost over? I got golf to go play.
Real quick, Kate, 30 seconds, right? This is
Go for it. You're good.
This is Mike's concept on this. If you were expected to do 10 and the output or whatever it was is 10, and you achieved 10 for the week, you did your job, you did your part, right? That was your expected outcome. Therefore, you have achieved what I would consider average output. No one shows up to be average. If the output number is 10, why not do 20 if you're capable of it? You should always outpace and outlast whatever your expectations are if you want to be considered someone who's good at what they do or even great. So unless you're coming to work to be average, which I don't think anyone is, you should try to do more. If you are capable of doing more, the next step I would challenge you to do is to help someone else get better at what they do. So exhibit top performing quality attributes as well as leadership attributes by helping one of your peers or one of your friends that you work with. That is how you shine in the workplace.
I love that. All right. So let's see. Let's get a little bit broad in here. Where do we think, obviously, we've talked about how the industry has changed so much over the past, 10 years, really 5 years. Where's it going? What can people coming out of college, coming out of high school, in middle school expect from cybersecurity over the next couple of years? What do we think? Adam, do you want to take this one?
I'll start with it. It's funny because the customers that I support with my team and with Tenable, we're facing the problems today. We're facing all the challenges we have today. And the problems we're facing today were the problems of yesterday's tomorrow, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So we see a lot of the, Internet of Things, IoT really starting to pop up, and things like, mobile. I know mobile's been around. People have had cell phones for a while. But mobile, that concept is really, a lot of companies are really starting to adopt that, embracing mobile technologies, and not just phones and tablets, but also that concept of working remotely, working from home. How do you address that? Now you have this attack surface, so to speak, that covers equipment that isn't even yours. It's somebody's home computer potentially, or someone logging into a website from their home computer. So you have challenges there, and a lot of organizations, I think, struggle with how they're going to address it. And maybe some of the earlier points we were talking around policy, if a company has these challenges, they may just prohibit that. They basically stop the use of said technology until they can figure out a way to secure it. The worst thing you can do is introduce things into your environment that you don't control, have no visibility to, and can't do anything about. At that point, you're blind. You have no idea what's going on. So IoT, mobile, working from home, and I would even say cloud. A lot of companies, cloud isn't a new concept. It is in the vast scale of technology, but it's a lot of companies have already early adopted it and got in there, and there's still a lot of companies going towards that. So I would say continuing in those common directions. I really don't know what the actual future is going to hold, though. You don't have a crystal ball? You can't tell us? Unfortunately, not today.
So do you think that, and Mike, I'm going to kick this to you, Do you think that the government and the military see some of this progression before the private sector sees it? Like, who's on the cutting edge of seeing all this new stuff?
That's a tough question. If you think of cyber, generally, it was initially thought to be a government problem. This is a big government problem, right? This is this is 2009, 2010. The DoD was finally expressing the idea that the Chinese we had adversaries in our networks and things were getting really bad. So in the beginning, it was the government that kind of had the foresight and kind of had the eye or the vision over the horizon of what was happening. But the wheels of government move very slow. Public sector, the commercial world is fast and free. So in my opinion, I would say what's next in cyber, what's next in this industry will always come from the commercial side or the private sector. For instance, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook will always move faster than the Pentagon. So I think you have to look that way. So what Adam said was absolutely right. It's going to be cloud. It's going to be IoT. Even in our company, we're talking about replacing issued laptops because now smartphones have enough processing power to be placed into a docking station and to actually pose and replace what your laptop would do. So it's coming. It's going to happen. Mobile, cloud. I'll say cloud one more time. Oh yeah, can't get away without saying machine learning as well as machine language. Those are two different things, right? And then you have artificial intelligence. So the ability to manipulate algorithms, the ability to predict predictability in data is becoming really important because there's so much data. And I would say from my last job where we actually did work in the SOC, it's the value of data that's become really important because there's so much data being created in the industry. It's hard to identify what is the valuable data from a security perspective. It's easy to collect it all, but what of it is actually going to be useful for a cybersecurity purpose? And that can become a full-time job if your system and or tools to process that data are not configured properly to get rid of the data that you don't need. So that's a really big deal, to be inundated with data to the point where you're not making timely decisions, and then you're not actually being a reliable security force for whatever your organization is if you can't properly manage that data or put value tags on the data that you need from the data that you don't.
That's a good point. Colin or Bill, do you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we already live in a time where cyber threat events have made or broke companies, sent them tumbling underwater and belly up, where personal people that I know have suffered ransomware events and lost literally everything digital that they own, photo memories from years ago that they can't replace and things like that. Where, my own personal information is captured and sold probably more times than I would care to admit in various breaches across the federal government and other sources of the internet connected world. So privacy is becoming a huge concern. I think cybersecurity as a industry and as a skill set and expertise is going to be increasingly valuable, increasingly sought out, and increasingly difficult to come by. All of the various skills necessary to adequately execute the job, from the soft skills of being able to explain the issue and the solution to all the hard skills of raw packet capture analysis, malware analysis, and all that other stuff that I geek out on.
Love it.
Yeah, and I just can. Oh, Adam, go ahead. I was going to say what Mike had said. Cloud is definitely important, and kind of related to that is, I think data classification with thing more and more going into the cloud. Organizations really have to have a handle on what their data is and classify it. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do, to determine, what's sensitive or or confidential. That's not an easy task, but with things going to the cloud, if you don't have it properly classified, it's going to be hard to have a handle on what's going in and out of the organization. And I also think being proactive is key. That even more so now today in terms of implementing new controls, policies, and whatnot. If you wait until something happens, you're too late at that point. So you got to start thinking out of the box and trying to get ahead of the attackers out there and start putting new policies, procedures, tools into place to protect your organization and your data.
Adam, I saw your hand.
It's okay. I'll save it for the next one.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Last question. We're going to roll. What's your advice? We've got, I don't know, 17 people on here. What is the advice that you would offer a young person who's interested in getting into the cybersecurity field? Adam.
I got two pieces of advice that I would offer. First is I challenge yourself in looking at how you use technology and understand potentially where you may have some of your own security risks. Colin mentioned privacy. Mike brought up data. Data is very important. Once you're using cell phones and computers and you have email addresses and all of those things, your data is out there in some capacity. So you need to be a good cyber citizen and focus on securing your information as best you can, making sure you have the appropriate privacy settings on, not disclosing information, and just being cautious. So I challenge everyone to do that. And the other piece of information, and it's always worked for me, and I try to promote this, is don't be afraid to ask questions. In any situation, no matter who you're with, if you have a question, don't hold back. Bring up the question. As long as it's productive, as long as you're adding to the conversation and you're learning, just go for it.
Who's next?
I'll take a stab. So my advice would be to figure out for approaching cybersecurity, figure out how it works first, and then figure out how to secure it. If you're interested in cybersecurity, learn the technology as Mike and all the others have been saying, and then figure out how to secure it. Because I remember in network security, or network technology, that was like the first thing that got me into it. When you're learning how to set the thing up and it says, oh, this is how I encrypt that password. That's pretty cool. Oh, I can close those connections if I don't need them. That hardens the system. That's awesome. And you fundamentally learn about cybersecurity from there, unless you really like paperwork, because the non-technical alternative is a lot of paperwork, right? Which is great too. It's necessary. But that would be my advice to any person looking to get into cybersecurity is identify that area that you really like to focus on. For me, it was network technology, and then figure out how to secure it.
I'll go ahead and go next. I got a couple pieces of advice. One, again, just to reiterate what Adam said, is ask questions. And told a long time ago, the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. So if you don't know something, you're not going to get an answer if you don't ask. So don't be afraid to ask. But another piece of advice I would have is seek out internships, particularly when you're in college. Not only is that going to give you practical on-the-job experience, that could also be a differentiator when you're looking for that full-time job. And then it also potentially give you the opportunity to dabble in different areas. During my undergraduate degree, I had 3 different 6-month internships, where I worked full-time for 6 months, then went back to school. And it was 3 different roles. So I got quite a bit of exposure over those 18 months, but that, it also gave me a year and a half of practical experience that I otherwise wouldn't have had. And it really kind of helped me focus on what I wanted to do. So, and kind of related to that is don't pigeonhole yourself, have an open mind. You might think you want to be doing pen testing, and that may be very well where you end up, but don't discount cybersecurity is huge. There's a lot of opportunities out there. There's more opportunities out there than there are people to fill them. So don't sell yourself short. Keep an open mind, and eventually you will find something that you enjoy and want to continue doing long term. But always keep an open mind out there.
Mike, you want to bring us home?
Sure, I'll bring it home. Going to foot stomp what Adam and Bill both said. Ask questions. If you don't ask questions, the assumption will be that you got it. If you don't got it and you didn't ask questions, you did yourself a disservice, because you had the opportunity to ask questions and you didn't. And now we're all off track. Become a life learner. Learning is a never-ending tale. One of the only guarantees in life is change, and the varying degrees of success we all achieve are our ability to adapt to the change that we encounter on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. So be willing, be flexible, and be willing to move the change. And one last thing is the concept. What if I told you succeeding and failing was the same thing? When you succeed, when you win, you're euphoric, you're excited, you're nostalgic, and you want that feeling to happen again. So you're motivated to go forth, do it again, and do it better. When you fail, you're despondent, you're maybe a little depressed, you're upset, you're frustrated, but it's also just a creation of energy. You should be motivated to go forth, do it again, and do it better. So don't seek success. Don't be afraid of failure at the same time. Seek fulfillment. Do the things that you're excited about. Do the things that you honestly want to get better at. And regardless of whether you succeed or fail at something, learn a specific lesson, figure out how to get better, and keep pressing on.
I love it. That's a great way to wrap it. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Please fill out the survey if you have time. It's in the chat, the SurveyMonkey link. And we really appreciate your time. To the panelists and to Colin's helper, thank you guys very much. We appreciate it.
Later, little guy.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks,
Thank you.
Kate.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.